it away.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Appreciate that. So we have an exciting portion to talk about in terms of GovConnectIowa. Obviously, I'm what you'd call a GovConnectIowa nerd. I'm excited to talk with you about it. So I just want to say welcome to the Iowa Department of Revenue's portion of today's webinar series. So my name is Jerica Pellington, and I work on the GovConnectIowa team. And today we'll be covering the access types available in GovConnectIowa. And then I'll also be going through an overview of other party access and third party authorization. So like Patrick said in our chat today, you will see Tara West. If we do not answer your questions during the webinar, we do receive and then review your questions afterward. And we will either update our website, GovConnectIowa, or the common questions that we have as answers are available. So the first thing we always have to do, if you've ever been to one of our webinars, is we do have to give you our disclaimer. So I will say that just note that this presentation is for general educational purposes only, and it should not be construed in any way as legal advice. The department could take a contrary position for this in the future, so just be aware of that. What we say here today is not binding on the department unless you wish to obtain a declaratory order. And any data that's used in today's examples are fictional and do not include actual taxpayer data. So now that that's out of the way, we'll go ahead and cover our agenda. So today we'll talk about the access types available in GovConnectIowa. We will review the steps in creating a logon and requesting access to tax accounts. Then we'll shift gears to talk about other party access and focus on third party authorization. We will have breaks throughout the webinar to take a look at the Q&As and answer them as we go through. So if you have questions, go ahead and put them in that Q&A box, and then we will be able to answer them as we go. So we'll start by discussing requesting access to tax accounts in GovConnectIowa. So in GovConnectIowa, you can request access and select one of the 5 options that you can see below. So the 5 options are the smaller bullet points underneath business access and other party access. So let's dive into what these truly mean. So with business access, there are 3 available options for users to choose from. So full access is the first and most powerful option that's available. This will ultimately give you full and unlimited access to the tax accounts in GovConnectIowa. This option would ideally be chosen by owners or senior staff at a company. It is important to note that full access can only be removed by Iowa Department of Revenue staff or the GovConnectIowa user themselves. So if you or someone on your team has any uncertainty with the longevity of access, just keep that in mind and just know that we do have other pathways that may work for you as well, which I'll cover here soon. The full access pathway does have other benefits to consider. So this access type would allow you to grant, manage, and revoke online access to all other users that are associated with that tax account. Another advantage is that if new tax accounts are added, say by another user or through a paper business registration form, immediate access is granted. And if there are any other access types out there that are associated to the business, they do have to request access and then receive that physical access code letter, which is sent to the taxpayer's headquarters address. So just keep those in mind. The next option that you have is administrator. So full access and administrator are very similar in terms of accessing and managing the tax accounts. Where the true difference lies is in managing access of other GovConnectIowa users and the ability for a full access user to manage administrators. So some perks of selecting administrator include managing the tax accounts, being able to add additional logons, which I'll talk about soon, and then managing other party users access. And then another perk is that you can request password resets for the additional logons that you created. And the third pathway is account managers. So account managers have the most limited access on GovConnectIowa. However, this means that they can still manage the tax accounts, meaning they can make payments, file returns, they can update other portions of tax accounts. However, they do not have the ability to manage other users. So if you are an employee of a business and you're working with GovConnectIowa or through GovConnectIowa, we do recommend that you select administrator or account manager access. So with other party access, there are two options available. Other party access is intended for third-party professionals that manage their clients' tax accounts via GovConnectIowa. Other party administrator and other party account manager are the two types, and these follow similar rules to business access. However, they cannot manage other users or GovConnectIowa users that have selected business access. They will both receive access to the Accountant Center, and the Accountant Center is a center that's dedicated to tax professionals that manage several clients. So from that center, you'd be able to view payments, returns, manage secondary logons, and you have more options just from one central location. So let's talk about secondary logons and additional logons and what those really are. So other party users can add what's called a secondary logon. And so think of it as a parent and child relationship. Once a tax professional gains access to their clients' accounts, they can create what we're calling a secondary logon. And these are basically an extension of the person's account that's creating that secondary logon. So this means that the parent account is ultimately responsible for managing their employees' security levels and their access to accounts. So this also means that access must be requested and granted by the parent logon. So this is done for a couple of reasons. This would allow for ease of staff transitioning in case a staff member leaves. So the person that would be in a parent logon role may be a supervisor or a manager of a unit, whereas a secondary logon would be the employee. So think of it as a hierarchy. It is important to note that they are dependent on each other. So that means that when the parent logon is deleted, the secondary logon is also deleted, which would revoke their access entirely. The other portion has to do with additional logons. So business access users with full access or administrator level access can create what we call additional logons. So this is the business user either setting up a brand new GovConnectIowa logon for someone else, or it's a way of them granting immediate access to another GovConnectIowa user. So in order for the business user to grant immediate access, they will need the other GovConnectIowa users' information. So think of their username and their email address. Additional logons have the same account type levels as requesting access, which is what we're talking about here, but it also includes some additional types. And one of these is the license manager. License managers are designed to manage only the licensing aspects of GovConnectIowa, which involves the presentations that you had heard earlier today. So for example, if your employee or your third party is only meant to apply or renew licenses with ABD, DIA, or Iowa Lottery, this would be the most appropriate access level type for them. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to walk through the screens that are available for create a logon and requesting access. So if you have any questions specifically for those processes, I would say go ahead and put those in the Q&A, and then we'll answer them once I'm done showing those screens. So the first step when you create a new logon, you will see this screen. So this is similar to what you had seen on the other licensing applications. We want to tell you up front what to expect. So this will tell you some of the features that are available, as well as the supported tax and license types. The second step is for you to enter your logon information. So make sure that you're entering a valid email address, as that will be used on the following screen for email verification purposes. You will see that the username and password requirements are available right on the screen to make it easier for you to identify and then meet those requirements. Say, for example, that the username is already taken, you will be notified on this screen before you're allowed to move forward. Another question that we get is why do I see asterisks on the password and secret answered fields? The reason for that is that once they match, we do have a security process in place that we mask those, so that way they're no longer visible. Once you have entered your logon information, you will move on to the email validation step. So an email will be sent to the email address provided in the prior step with a validation code. You would then get that validation code, which is 6 digits, and you'd be able to enter the code on this screen and then click next to continue. The next step is to answer if you are a bulk filer. So you must register to be a bulk filer. So if you are questioning if you should answer yes to this, or if you fit that criteria, we have included helpful information right on the screen to help you with that. I will repeat that it does require a formal registration process, as it requires specific testing and does require manual approval by the department. So if you think that you are a bulk filer, I would ask the question. You can contact taxpayer services. You can look on our website. We do have quite a bit of information available. If you are a tax professional that's filing one return at a time, or if you only plan to renew alcohol or food service licenses, you are likely not a bulk filer, and you could select no and just move forward from this. The next step in the process is to decide if you need to request access to an account. So if you are planning to renew licenses only, or you need to register a new business, you would be able to just select no here and click next. That would then finalize the create a logon process, and you'd be able to log in. However, if you have filed a return previously, or you know that you're registered with the Department of Revenue, you can request access to your account right now. So what you would do is you would select yes here. And I will tell you that this process is extremely similar to requesting access while actually logged into GovConnectIowa. So I'm just going to walk through those screens now. I will tell you that we are working on updating this verbiage on the screen to make sure that we're including every area. So if you're applying for tax credits or a tax credit transfer, you can select no here as well, and you could click next and then go ahead and act on your tax credits. So the first step when you're requesting access is to select your access type. So in this scenario, I will assume that I am a business owner that's wanting to file my own tax returns, and I will click next. So in this case, I would select business access and click next. And then the next step is to select the right access level, which is what we talked about earlier. Since I am the business owner, I would select full access, and I'd be able to click next to continue. Once the access type and the level have been selected, you must then select an account type associated with your business or entity. So you can think of this as a shared secret. This information you are validating should only be known between the department and an authorized individual. We do recommend that you do not share this information with anyone outside of your organization or your tax professional. So in this scenario, I'm going to select corporation, and then I'll click next. So the next step is to enter the verification information. Once you have entered in the FEIN or permit number for permit related tax types, you can then enter a piece of verification information and click next to continue. If the information matches our records, you may proceed to the next step. So what happens after you verify the tax account information? The first thing is that you're going to see a review screen, and you will see a zip code associated with the headquarters or primary mailing address. If that doesn't match where you expect the letter to go, that would mean that it's a great time to pause and have an authorized individual contact the department to verify that the headquarters address is correct. Once you've done that, a letter with an access code will be mailed to the taxpayer's headquarters or primary mailing address. So after you've created your logon, you can then log in. You'd be able to register a new business. You could request access to additional accounts. You could renew your licenses, and you could make quick payments while you wait for that access code letter. Once you receive that access code letter, you can then return to GovConnectIowa, enter the access code, and then you would receive online access to those tax accounts. Now, one of the common questions that we get is that, hey, I need to make a payment today and I don't have access. What do I do? So one of the great perks is that if you need to pay before you receive that access code, you can. So we have that solution built. So what you would see is if you are not logged into GovConnectIowa, you can use that quick pay feature that's available on the home screen. And then if you log into GovConnectIowa and you're not connected to any customers or accounts yet, you can also quick pay from that home screen as well. So there are a couple different options out there. So we have covered quite a bit of information at this point. So I'll go ahead and share where to find this information along with the most common question that my team receives. So to view the common questions we have answered, you could head out to our website, which is tax.iowa.gov, and you could go to the Need Help tab. On that drop-down menu, if you click common questions, you'll be able to see a table that's built that allows you to filter based on the topic you're looking for. So GovConnectIowa does have its own filter, which is awesome. You can go ahead and dial it down, and then it does have a search option so you can search within those filters. The most common question that I get is, what if I haven't received my access code letter? So the answer that I would provide is that it may take up to 2 weeks to receive it by mail. However, if you requested that access code and you haven't received it yet, I'd say within 2 weeks, I recommend that you contact our taxpayer services team, or that you reach out to the headquarters address and verify that if they have received it. Sometimes there may be a gap in actually providing that access code letter to you since it is going physically to the taxpayer. What you'll want to do is, if you don't receive it and you do contact taxpayer services, is just give us a call and make sure that the contact information on file for your tax account is correct. And then just a reminder that you can still use quick pay while you wait for it. So I'm going to take a quick pause here, get a drink of water. Super important for me to stay hydrated, right? So I will go ahead and take a pause here and see if there are any questions in the Q&A.
We do have a few coming in on the Q&A. Is there any way you can get instant access and don't have to wait 2 weeks to get snail mail?
That is a great question. So if your client has access, they would be able to grant you immediate access. That's one option that you have. And they would be able to grant it to you there. Now, if your client does not have a GovConnectIowa logon, which they're not required to in order for you to gain access, you would have to wait for that actual letter.
What if I've attempted to request, I think you talked about this a little bit, the key code and get no response when we're trying to contact? What's the best way to make sure we're getting those access codes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think the key code may be in regards to that verification step. There may be some times where it may go to your junk folder or it may go to a spam folder. Those are the most common scenarios that we see. But I would try a different email address or try the phone number option if you can. And then once you have one of those set up, when you get logged into GovConnectIowa, you can actually go in and add a second one, or you can update it. I know that we do see those happen on the back end. So we can see those as well. And then it looks like there's another question. Can you clarify the best email and phone number? So we will, oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, I think Tara's typing in there, but yeah, I think you also will have the contact slide coming up at the end, I believe. So
yeah, you got it. Thank you.
We're on it.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I will go ahead and move on to the next portion here. And like I said, if we didn't get to your question or Tara is unable to answer it in the chat right away, we will review those and then respond accordingly. So let's go ahead and talk about the overview of other party access and third party authorization. Some of these forms are newer, and our goal today is to provide clarity on which forms may work best for your situation, along with some processing tips that will help you through the process. So we will start by defining what an other party is versus a third party. So an other party is used in connection with GovConnectIowa. So this means if you have other party access, you have online access to the tax accounts on GovConnectIowa. The other party access option is intended for third party professionals. So think tax preparers, accountants, or third parties. And then a third party is an authorized individual / person other than the taxpayer themselves. So examples for an individual taxpayer include a spouse, family member, court-ordered guardian, accountant, attorney. Those would all fall into third parties. Examples of an entity taxpayer include either an officer or an employee that could be a third party. I will say this is a fun, did you know, but online access does not include or equal third-party authorization. And it's very important that we make that distinction up front. So if you have access to the tax accounts on GovConnectIowa, and then say that you have a question about the tax account, or you have a question about an application or form that you had submitted, and you contact the department, we may require a third-party form in order to assist you based on what you provided previously. So just keep that in mind as you contact the department. We have 6 forms that we'll be covering today. All of this information is available on our website, which I'll provide that pathway toward the end of the registration. But the first form that we're going to talk about today is the public record request. So if you are seeking information that you believe to be public in nature, you can submit the paper form, or the request is available through GovConnectIowa. The second form is the Iowa 8979 pass-through representative appointment form. So if you are a pass-through entity and need to change or provide your representative information, you may do so through this form. And the third form is the Iowa 4506 request for copy of tax return. If you do need a copy of your state tax return, this would be the form you could use to request a copy. And the next forms that we're talking about have to do specifically with third-party authorization. So we'll go into deeper detail on each of these forms after these slides. So the fourth form is the Iowa 2848 power of attorney form. So if you want to grant authority to someone else, typically a representative, third party, or a tax professional, to both obtain confidential information and make decisions on your behalf, this is the form for you. The fifth form is the representative certification form. So if you have authority granted elsewhere, this may be the best option for you. We do have quite a bit of information on our website about this form as well. So I will go ahead and show you where to find that as well. And the sixth form is the Iowa 8821 tax information disclosure designation form. If you want to grant permission to an individual to obtain confidential information but not act on your behalf, this would be the right form to complete. So let's start with the Iowa 8821 form. So if you'd like for someone to be able to discuss your confidential tax information with the department, this would be the form to complete. The primary use of this form that we've seen is that it's for anyone that you want to discuss information with us. Some examples that we've seen include the ombudsman, legislators, or if you have administrative staff that are seeking a status update on the tax account. And ways to complete this form, you can complete it through GovConnectIowa, or you could submit a paper form. You can also revoke this form at any time the same way. So then we'll go ahead and talk about the power of attorney form. So what exactly is a power of attorney, otherwise referred to as a POA? So a power of attorney is a legal document that allows someone else to act on your behalf. So power of attorneys can be helpful to many people and others who want to choose a trusted person to act when they cannot. So essentially, this person has the same authority as you to make decisions, handle your tax affairs, and manage your tax accounts. One thing that we have noticed is that if you are expecting that more than 3 representatives are to be included as POAs, we have created what's called the 2848A form. And so that has to be completed and attached with the Iowa 2848. The 2848A should only be used to appoint additional power of attorneys that weren't originally noted on that Iowa 2848. And then another common question that we get is what happens if I don't list a limitation? So what happens if it's not documented on the 2848? The department will automatically place a limit of 3 years. So on the last slide, we were talking about the Iowa 2848. So that's when the taxpayer wants to appoint somebody as their representative. But there are lots of situations where outside of that situation or outside of the department that a representative already has that authority. So let's think about times when a guardian is appointed by a court, or you're an executor of an estate, or you're the tax manager of your company, and you already have the authority to act. So you have that authority based on your position, some authority that you have inherently, and it's not the taxpayer that's appointing you directly through the Department of Revenue. So that's where this form comes in. The representative certification form is to tell us about that authority. So when you complete this form and you submit it, specific documentation may need to be provided based on the type of representative you are. So if you are the executor, an example would be that we may need a copy of the will or a court order. If you're a legal guardian, we have seen court orders submitted with that. And there may be different documentation requirements that are based on the type that you choose. So if you have questions about the form, I would recommend that you head out to our website. Again, I'll show you where that is here in a couple slides. And then you can also contact our taxpayer services team, and they can help you through, walk through the representative certification form. And then what we'll talk about next is we'll talk about the business processes in place at the department. So we know what the forms are. Now, what do you do with them? So in order to authorize a third party, you have a couple different options. One, you can submit the authorization form through GovConnectIowa after you're connected to the tax accounts. Or 2, you can complete and mail the third party forms. I will tell you that we used to accept federal forms or other third-party forms that were not Iowa specific. Sometimes they came in where, you know, the federal or the IRS was crossed out and Iowa was added. Obviously, that's not as secure as we'd like to be. So this process has changed. And so we will only accept Iowa forms now, and no substitutions are allowed. This process changed because we want to make sure that the taxpayer knows that whoever they appoint is reviewing Iowa specific information and that they're acknowledging and approving that responsibility. Since we expect the taxpayers to be knowledgeable of these actions, we do require that authorized individuals sign certain Iowa third-party forms. So one form that may be exempt from this requirement of authorized individuals is the representative certification form. Since this form is the representative telling us that they have the authority, this form will likely be submitted by the representative of the company, so they would be able to sign it. Again, refer to those instructions, refer to the website as you're completing those forms, and reach out if you have any questions. And then another piece of information is regarding signatures. Due to updated guidance from the IRS, the 3 main forms that we've been reviewing today, they must be signed by hand or via a digital signature that has a digital certificate. Stamped or typed signatures are not accepted. One question that we get is, what is a digital signature and how is it different from an e-signature? So an e-signature would be typing it out and sending it that way. A digital signature with a digital certificate is where we ask you to utilize a software that offers a type of electronic signature that uses encryption technology that basically underlies and verifies that signature. So an example of some of those providers would be DocuSign, Adobe Sign, Dotloop, and many, many more. If you Google digital signatures, you can find a slew of information and available providers. So once your third-party form is submitted, it is sent to our registration team for review. And so this is where our dedicated third-party team will review it, and they will either approve it, deny it, or they may request more information from you. We reached out to our registration team prior to the webinar to hear the most common reasons for rejection, because we wanted to provide those to you to help you figure out where some of the gaps may be if your form's getting rejected. So most commonly, forms are rejected due to authorized individuals not signing the forms. So prior to submitting a form, you will want to make sure that the right authorized individuals are already registered with the department so the form can be processed. They did provide some other common reasons a form may be rejected. The first one here is that the department will only accept the most recent version of the form. So it's important that you're pulling them directly from our website. We do not accept outdated versions. So then in turn, if you do submit one of those, it would likely be denied. We don't accept forms that were signed and dated more than 6 months ago. So think of it like a check. Those are no longer valid, and neither will these forms after 6 months. So if you have one of these forms, you will have to resubmit it with an updated signature and date. The next one that we talked about is the e-signature. So those are not accepted, and we require that it's either signed by hand or that you have a digital signature. Another reason is that the representative submitting the representative certification form provided the entity's FEIN, not their individual ID number, such as their social security number. The next one, also with the representative certification form, you can select either general or durable POA. If either of those options are selected, additional documentation is required, and oftentimes that document is not included with the form. And then lastly, additional documentation is not provided at the time of submission. So that's why it's important to just take a final read through of the instructions and the form and just make sure that you're submitting all of the documentation that we're requesting. We do include instructions for next steps on the letters that we send. So if you have any questions, I'd recommend reading down at the bottom of the letter. A lot of times you'll see something that says next steps or what should I do now? You can read that and proceed that way, or you can reach out to the number that's listed on that letter. So we talked about authorizing third parties in the last few slides. So let's talk about the review process when it's complete. How do you know who currently has third-party authorization? The best way would be to be connected to the tax account in GovConnectIowa. So the best place to look is the Revoke or Withdraw link under the third-party authorization panel on the I Want To tab. That will show you a current listing of who currently has third-party authorization. You would just want to make sure, unless you plan to revoke or withdraw that person or that authorized individual, that you just don't move forward with that web request. And then the second option to know who's authorized is by contacting taxpayer services. So they will be able to share this information with an authorized representative. So let's talk about revoking an authorized third party now. A good example that we've seen is that, say, a business owner decides to change their tax preparer, their tax firm. So this means that a new preparer would be handling their tax affairs. This means that the prior tax preparer's authorization needs to be revoked and a new tax preparer should be authorized. So to do that, you have multiple options. The first option is to connect to the tax accounts via GovConnectIowa and revoke that third party. The second option is to notify the department in writing. I will say that we do have examples and we do have specific requirements on our website. And if you go out there, you would be able to view it. And then another piece to keep in mind is what happens if you, or can you accidentally revoke someone? The answer is that you possibly could. So it's important to note that when a new Iowa 2848 form is submitted, that all prior Iowa 2848 forms are revoked. And so this means that if you're submitting an updated 2848, make sure that you're listing all of the POAs that should be able to act. If you don't, this could mean that those other third parties are then revoked. And then another important note or common question that our third party team gets is that spouses filing on the same tax return must complete separate Iowa 2848 forms. So what we'll talk about next are Iowa account numbers, and these apply directly to third parties. So the question that we get is we refer to them as EINs. And so what's an EIN? An EIN is used to aid in identifying the third party to the department without using their social security number or other personal numbers. So what we've heard from third parties in the past is that when you're completing third party forms, you may not be comfortable sharing your social security number. So this allows you to have an alternative number that you can provide to the department that is related just to you. So who would use one? The third party would use an EIN on any future third party access form or when they're contacting the department on behalf of whom they have been granted authority. What do you do if you don't have an EIN? You can submit the request an Iowa account number link on GovConnectIowa. And then what happens if you forget it is you can contact taxpayer services and they will be able to locate that number for you. And then another question that we get is what's the difference between an IDR ID and an EIN? So an IDR ID is what you see on GovConnectIowa right in the top left-hand corner underneath the business name. So that's a unique identifying number that's assigned to the business or the individual, whereas an EIN is for third parties as an alternative to using their social security number. Another common question that we get is what if I have questions about my federal taxes? The Iowa Department of Revenue is for state of Iowa taxes only, so we cannot communicate with you or we can't share federal tax information. So like I said, we cannot release it. And so if you have questions about your federal taxes, we recommend that you contact the IRS, which is the Internal Revenue Service, for information regarding the release of the federal tax information. So the question, that I think is going to know, because I've said it several times, is go out to our website. The question that you may be asking is, okay, I'm at your website. I'm a little lost. Where do I go? So when you go out to tax.iowa.gov, up at the top, you're going to see these drop-down menus, and you're going to go to resources. And on that drop-down, you're going to see the first one, which is law and policy information. When you click that, you're going to see a list of available resources there for you. And the one that you're looking for is down at the bottom, and it's third-party authorization. This will include all of the information that I've covered today, as well as tables to help you identify which form you should use and a little bit more information that you may need. So what we'll do now is I'm going to open it up for Q&A, whether it's about GovConnectIowa access, if it's about third parties. We want to try to answer any of the questions or or address any frustrations that you may be experiencing. So I'm going to take a pause here and go ahead and head out to the Q&A. Patrick, have you seen any come through?
I think the ones that have come through, Tara has been an absolute champion in answering. So if you did put a question in there, be sure to check in your answered tab where Tara may have typed a response to you. But Jake, I think great job covering a lot of that information. I think really good pieces of information to answer and to learn. And I think definitely a lot of nuance in there that you were able to cover. I think makes a lot of sense. So if you're still here watching with us, if you have questions on some of the specific things or just general GovConnectIowa questions, go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. And Jake, if you want to go to your next slide, I think we've got a couple other resources things that maybe you can kind of talk through on how people can find help for themselves.
Yeah, we sure do. So we have multiple different options for you. So one of them is going to be for guidance and detailed information. You can visit our website, which is that first link. This is a PowerPoint that you're going to get. So feel free to refer to this later on, or you can go out to the help link on the tax.iowa.gov website. And then we also have YouTube video tutorials that are out there, some of which you'll hear my voice again, just doing like an instructional walkthrough guide of various web requests that are out there. I do also recommend that you subscribe to updates. And so we provide updates via our Gov delivery service. So you can subscribe to them on our website. And so again, that's tax.iowa.gov. And you would scroll down to the bottom of the screen and you're going to see a big red button that says subscribe. And then if you need further assistance, I'm always going to ask, that you rely on taxpayer services. They're obviously a very busy team, but they're great. They know what they're talking about. We have great training programs available on our end to make sure that they're up to speed to respond to your questions. So one of our specialists would be able to assist you. So I'm going to leave this information up here for a few minutes. And Patrick, we'll go ahead and head back to the Q&A and see if there's anything else that came through. And it looks like Tara, you are amazing. Tara is able to answer all of your questions that I've seen so far.
Yep, she's been able to handle them. So I do think, too, if you do have specific questions that do come to your specific case or your abilities to access or use, GovConnectIowa, like Jerica said, contacting taxpayer services is the best way to go. And I believe that best email address is idr@iowa.gov.
You got it. Yep. It's idr@iowa.gov. You can send your email there. And we do have a team of specialists that are there to help you as well. And it may even be Tara.